JBlog, October 18th, 2009. Today I'd like to start with looking at the Market Watch, looking at the news in general, but Market Watch specifically. First of all, first observation is this Balloon Boy story that seems to be gripping North American news networks. While there's a war going on, there's still a market that is falling apart. Unemployment, people are losing their houses. The entire nation is watching this silly thing about this balloon. It's one of those things where they need any distractions whatsoever from reality. Amazing. But the more important thing today is again this headline here. Good news in housing data. Kind of implies that there's good news in housing data. US housing market is coming off its worst downturn in more than 60 years, boosted by market forces and government assistance. Now, this is fact. Like it is presented as a fact. There is good news and it is coming off its worst downturn. Then we read into the actual story. Now, uh, the the subject line in the actual story says positive news expected in housing reports. This is very different because now it's expected. Before that, it was a fact. There's good news coming. Now there is good news coming, maybe. And this is just so typical of headline news. This is the continuing disinformation that is out there. While foreclosure rates are skyrocketing, prime mortgages are starting to fail in large numbers. Over 50% of mortgages that are now in foreclosure, houses that are in foreclosure, are now prime mortgages. Subprime is pretty well washed through the system, but people losing their jobs, that makes for prime mortgages failing. So this is something very different. Looking at the market, as I usually do in cases like this, now that I'm gotten off my little rant here. Oil, big surprise of this week. I did not expect this to happen. Oil making lower highs, this head and shoulder formation. Once again, a head and shoulder formation here. Shoulder, head, shoulder. And the right shoulder violated. And the market turns right around and whoosh, goes back up again. Um, Again, one of these wonderful violations of technical rules that have been happening in the market. Technical analysis is definitely becoming a lot more tricky than it was 10 and 20 years ago because these obvious symbols, these obvious formations are starting to fail. Now, from an RSI point of view, oil once again shows as being overbought. Right here, stochastics. Actually, I don't have. Yes, I do have stochastics on oil. Stochastics are again on the heavy side, but the trend is definitely up, mind you. It is very steep, it's parabolic. I wouldn't mind shorting some more oil at this point, to be honest with you. Natural gas is certainly not mirroring what oil is showing us. It is once again dropping, which is to be expected, where China might be using oil and could be buying it on the market. It has nobody in North America has very much use for natural gas. Gasoline is upticking as well, again very steep. So this is once again interesting. We had nice double top decline here and suddenly once again it flies up. Now gold itself had a pullback and silver also had a pullback. Silver's pullback was actually more significant than gold's pullback. This is very interesting that those two would actually have a downturn on Friday while oil would spike up that high. Copper is still in a downtrend right here, even though this, what I expected to be a bit of a drop here, did not come about. So once again, it's a violation of technical rules that just don't seem to be holding very much these days, and that sort of implies a possible, well, a manipulated market. But you know, the question is how much is it manipulated? US dollar was my trade for last week. Nothing much happened in the US dollar. I mean, the US dollar itself dropped, but I am not actually in the FX markets. I did take an option position on UUP. UUP is an ETF that holds a bullish US dollar position, and I bought the 23 option for March expiry, because I do believe there will be a turnaround in the US dollar, and the US dollar should be going higher sometime before then. So I have the 23 strike price on the UUP, and even though I have had a drop here again because I entered the position right here, UUP itself has dropped, but options haven't changed, and that's mostly due to market nervousness and the VIX. You do have to understand the VIX in order to trade options. The VIX basically indicates the option premium that is being paid. Because the tricky part about trading options is that you can be right and still lose money, or you can be wrong and make money. It sort of depends on how much margin is built into the option that you're buying, and your time value, the velocity of the underlying security. It is a tricky business. Um, Personally, I usually stay away from buying options. I prefer to sell options myself, but in this particular case, it simply was the more cost-effective way of buying UUP at a very low risk. So we'll see what happens here. Over the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'm willing to hold it. Let's see what happens in that time period. And I'm hoping for 20 to 50 to maybe even if I'm lucky 100% return on that position. That would be nice. Um, but again, it's a hedge against lots of other things. Another stock that I'm holding is Vale. That's one of the few that I'm holding long, besides my um, exploration, mining, and uranium part, which is more of a long-term holding. Uranium being the last of the metals whose price has not recovered. Unlike all the other metals and energies, uranium is still down in the dumpsters, and sooner or later that should have to change. So there's a relatively large position I'm holding in diverse uranium stocks on in the Toronto on the Venture Exchange in Canada. Um, but as I said, on the Vale side of on the long side of things in on the New York Stock Exchange, Vale is one of the companies I'm holding. Again, an options position, relatively large, and that has been going extremely well. Brazil is definitely one of the countries to watch. Um, in the future, it will probably be the leader of the South American uh, markets, being the largest and I believe most populous country down there. So I'm keeping my eye on Brazil in a big way, much more so than some of the other ones that are being touted at this point. S&P 500, well, as I said, it is still continues going up. They say you can fool some of the people all the time, or all the people some of the time. It seems that they continue to be able to fool all the people all the time, because the rhetoric that says everything is fine, get back to work, people are buying it. And I continue being amazed at how dumb people really are, not being able to look out their front door and seeing that things actually are quite bad. But it doesn't seem to stop anybody from heading in there. I guess greater fool theory is still in effect. And in the meantime, as traders, of course, we do need to make money. So, see what happens. Anyways, that's all I have for this week. Nothing concrete. Still basically waiting for this thing to go either one way or another way definitively. Have fun, make lots of money next week, and good luck.